Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Time to Come Alive. My name is Valerie Hope, and I am your host. I'm your coach, and this is one of my favorite opportunities every week to bring conversations that help us become more conscious of ourselves, make us more connected with one another, and create. We have the opportunity to be more creative. Now, I was sharing with my guest, which I'll introduce in just a few minutes, how I'm so excited to have intentional conversations. These are the kind of things that I love doing just for fun. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for the rest of you to join us in this conscious conversation and also perhaps inspire you to have conversations with those in your own life. So to do that, if you're logging on live right now, if you're watching us on Facebook Live or you're on with us on Zoom, I recommend that you share this share with people in your social media circle that you're participating on the call so that they can also listen in live and participate with you. If you're listening to this recorded already, share it with other people so that way you guys can engage in a conversation of your own about the topic today. And we'll get to the topic in just a moment. As you know, I'd like to prepare the listening of the participants or the audience. Those of you who are listening have an opportunity to listen a little differently. And because today we're talking about motherhood and what that means and the impact that motherhood might have on a person, especially mothers, but also communities, I want you to take a moment to really think about ways in which you can create space and become more patient or become more open to all the things that come with either being a mother, if you're a mother, or having children in your midst. So to do that, just ask you to take a few deep breaths just to get centered. For some of you, might mean you might close your eyes if it's something that's comfortable for you, or you might decide to just soften your gaze just a bit as you prepare and start thinking. I want you to think about areas in your life right now, today, this week, in the future, that you need to have full capacity of your heart and your mind, meaning you have to be open, you have to be prepared to receive as well as to give freely. So think of an area where that's important right now. Good, take another deep breath. Now, we're gonna go through some mantras that I found on scarymommy.com. I know the name Scary Mommy seems a little odd, but the mantras I thought would be applicable to anybody, regardless of whether you, like I said, have children of your own or are in a space where you need to have the patience, the generosity that is required when being around children. As I say each mantra, I'm going to ask you to repeat it to yourself in your mind 3 times. And we have a few mantras to share. So for each one, again, just repeat it in your head to yourself 3 times. We'll start with the first one. The first one is, this too shall pass. The next mantra is, if it makes for a good story, then it's worth doing. The next one is, be brave, be bold. The final mantra, will I care when I'm 80 years old? All right, with that, a couple more deep breaths to sink it in. Feel free to use these mantras at any point in your day, especially when things seem to be going off the rail, like this too shall pass. Now you have the opportunity to give a little bit more freely, to receive more freely. All of those opportunities to create clear and create space in your heart and your mind is available to you by using these mantras. Okay, you may open your eyes or focus your gaze again. We're gonna start this conversation. I wanna introduce today's guest. And we did make a change. So those of you who listened to the session last week, I mentioned that we would have Sandy Minogue coming on, a prayer warrior, friend of mine. We're gonna actually reschedule her to a later date, but I I have someone today that I'm so excited to introduce to you. She's a great friend of mine. Her name is Lavanya Challa. Lavanya and I met, gosh, has it been a year, Lavanya? It's been quite a bit.
Yeah.
We actually connected because we were both at the registration table for some personal development courses that she and I have both taken. We were helping out with registration, and then between people coming and going from the table, we'd have a little side conversation, and then we focus again on whatever we were doing and have another side conversation. But the side conversations, which for some people might be kind of shallow, right? Like I'll talk about the weather or something. Somehow, I don't even know what we talked about, but it was profound. It was pretty profound, to the point where we actually scheduled time to talk again. And then ever since, we've just kind of met at a regular cadence, and we've talked about everything from motherhood to development. She's given me relationship advice. When I was in the process of writing a book, which is still pending, by the way, Lavanya also generously shared her story with me. And that's one of the areas that I felt, oh my goodness, this would be a fantastic opportunity for us to have this conversation on time to come alive. Because Lavanya, and I'll have you share a bit more in a moment, but Lavanya has two beautiful daughters and a husband, wonderful husband. And her daughters are Anaga, who's 11, Divya, who's 6 years old. And she was just sharing with me earlier how Anaga, Lavanya, and her husband have all partnered together to support Divya, who is on the autism spectrum, and what that looks like in their family dynamic, what that looks like for Lavanya as a mother. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity for her to just talk about her journey through motherhood and all the special moments it's brought. So Lavanya, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I am too. And I think it would be helpful for everyone if you were to share why you said yes when I invited you. What is it that you wanted to get out of this experience of being on the program?
Okay. So I've seen a couple of your podcasts, and I really loved how you brought, like, when your guests shared, you had really, insightful questions. And it got me present to, if I were in conversation with you, I would be present to a lot more than what I'm, on a daily basis. I'm so focused on what needs to get done. I'm not at all in the presence of what I've accomplished or how life is for me and for the people around me. And so I really love that I get, it's really time to come alive, to get present to the whole journey. And what I'd like to get out of today's interaction is, every time I speak to you, I come away with some nugget of inquiry, which really made a difference for me. And so I'd like to discover something new about myself and how I live life and take it back to my family.
Hey, no pressure, but sure, thanks, of course. And thank you so much. That's very kind. I do see what you mean, that sometimes having conversations with somebody that can reflect back to you how they're listening or what they hear, maybe even between the lines at times. If I'm really connected, somehow it feels like it's a between the lines comment, that it does provide a level of insight of something that we might just regularly do and be completely unconscious about. So I appreciate your comment. But you also said something to me yesterday that I wanted to highlight about what this meant for you to actually say yes to do this publicly. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So I'm just starting out as an artist, and one of the things I've been resisting is coming alive on social media. And there are a lot of inhibitions, like, oh, I'm going to look stupid, I'm going to look silly, and I don't look good, and all of those conversations. And I really want to break free of that. And this is an opportunity for me to kind of get my toe in the water.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, congratulations, you have broken free. This is what it looks like to break free, everybody. You just say yes, and you're participating, and you're live on Facebook, and you're going to be recorded from here to eternity. You can share this with your kids. When you play this at their wedding or something. They'll love it. All right, so thank you so much, because I think that's really one of the reasons I wanted to highlight that comment is because it's really the purpose and the meaning that I wanted this program to have, is that it's an opportunity for people to find a way to break free just a little bit more from whatever normal constraint or whatever limitation we sometimes impose upon ourselves. And that's what coming alive looks like. And it may not be that you're on every week, but it might mean that when you have an opportunity, you say yes, freely. Good. So let's talk a little bit about your motherhood, because first of all, tell us where are you from? How long have you been a mother, or how long have you been married? And just kind of tell us a little bit about your journey into motherhood.
Okay. I'm from South India. I'm educated as an architect, though I never practiced it. And I've been a mother for now 11 years. And I have two daughters, Anika and Divya. Divya who's 6. And, I'd say 11 plus 6, 17 years of being a mother. Um, the first child I had, I was so nervous. I was so scared I'd break her, or I don't know how to do this. But I was really clear I wanted to be a mother. And when the second one came along, I said, oh, I'm going to enjoy every moment. Because the first time I was so worried about, oh, come on, will this ever end? That kind of thing was going on. But the second one, I really was enjoying every minute. Even the crying and all those. And she turned out to be a very mischievous one. So it was all the more fun. And I ongoingly learn a lot from my children, and I'm not the same person anymore.
So tell us about what were the expectations that you and your husband had about becoming parents?
Well, we didn't. We were really young when we had our first child. And I don't know how to answer that. We didn't have any expectations. It really was a roller coaster. We were discovering and finding out things as we went along. We did we did start out wanting to be perfect parents. Like, we'll do this, unlike, people in our lives. And
For
it did start.
example,
Well, I didn't have TV for the first few years of my daughter's childhood. Or I didn't give her sugar and all those ideal things that I wanted to do. And then a few years later, she'd go to a birthday party. All she wanted was sugar. And so I said, okay, fine, let me just, redefine my goals and let her have a little bit. And she watches crazy amounts of TV now. Both do. And I'm okay with that. Not because, I have no power over it, but more because it's out there. If I'm going to not let them watch at home, they're going to go out and watch somewhere else. And I'd rather they watch at home and I know what they're watching than do it, hidden. And so, yeah, I try to create an open space with them. But yeah, as you have your second child, your idealism kind of goes down. You renegotiate what's important.
Interesting. And for you, you also had some changes, right? Because when you realized that Divya had some special challenges, mentioned that also impacted. Can you share what the challenges and also what were the changes that you and your husband had to make?
So when we had Divya, she started, running before she could stand. And she was naughty from the beginning. Yeah. She would just prop herself up and she'd launch herself across the room. And so we enjoyed all the mischief, but gradually, as we found out later, she had special needs. She was diagnosed being on the spectrum, and her challenges were communication and social interaction. And I remember when we first got the diagnosis, and it didn't happen just overnight. We knew for about 8-9 months that she has special needs, because there was 0 to nil, almost no social interaction. No eye contact. She wouldn't talk. She wouldn't respond to her name. And she didn't learn any language until we took her to speech therapy, and for 6 months she just picked up one word, and that she didn't even know how to use it. She just repeated it. So we knew there was something was off and that she needed special attention. And so when we got our diagnosis, on the one side there was relief. We finally knew what we're dealing with. On the other hand, I had all this image of, oh, she's going to be living with us for the rest of her life. She's not going to be speaking. She may never have a career. She may never have kids of her own. It also meant, that we won't get to do what we want, because what we have, an image of special needs parents, is what we saw in movies, or really rare cases that we've, hear from friends or family. And back then, when I was growing up in India, there wasn't that much awareness of how people were dealing with it. There was just, oh, he's different. Something's off here. And so one of the things that I kind of had to deal with was, oh no, this is it. My life's over. It's going to be about her. And it was a journey. Like, it took us a few months of introspection, reflection. When they said autism, we brought in all these, kind of visions into it. And then we had to really get clear that, oh, the doctor said she has autism. And that just means she has special, different needs or different challenges. She may take, 20 years to finish high school. So what? Why should she finish in 18 years? I mean, why should she finish high school at 18? She can take the time she needs. And so what if she never has a career? So what if she never leaves home? We have a child who just loves being herself. And so we started being more attentive to, her, started loving what she loves. And we also started doing the things we love doing. Instead of waiting for an empty nest to start doing it, we started doing it right now. And so I started my art career. Like, I started painting. I started selling my work as a professional artist. And I started traveling. And it's really precious and a breakthrough for me to get that I can have the life I want with the circumstances I'm dealing with. And
I really love that you said that you didn't have to wait for the empty nest for life to kick in, right? What was but leading up to that, something happened, right? There's something that happened to change the mentality of, okay, we're just going to have to deal with all of this until whatever age. But what was a conversation, or what was the awakening that had you decide not to wait until you had an empty nest to start living that way?
So I think I was in a course, developmental course. And
the landmark course that you were taking?
Yes, a landmark wisdom
landmark
course.
Education.
Yes, landmark. And I remember looking at how life occurs to me. And I brought up my life with my 6-year-old, like how life occurs with her. And I had identified that I have this conversation, this view called, I cannot handle her. She's too much for me. I cannot do this and I'll fail. And I kind of looked back, and why do I have this conversation? What happened that I have this? Or when was the first time I felt this? And I was able to go back to my first daughter when she was, I think, 4 months. She was crying so much. I was on my own at home, and I had help, but nobody could help her. All she wanted was me. But even with me, she just kept crying. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is so much harder than I thought. What was I thinking? Being a mom. And I just don't have it figured out. And I've just been reliving that story with each child. And when I got that clear, I said, okay, I can handle her. And I slowly, it wasn't like overnight I took on everything, but slowly I took actions. Like, when I saw this, I started doing art. Like, I took on 100-day game, and I was painting for 100 days just to get over my fear of completing my paintings. Until then, I was scared if I finished it beyond 70%, I'd ruin it, because by then it looked better than I expected. So if I fit, like, if I just go for one step further, I might just ruin it. So better keep it this way. And so I had paintings I had not touched for 5 years. And so I just took on a game to finish things, took on to a game to ruin a few paintings, go all out and have fun. And in the process, like, everything was a little bit of expansion, a little bit of growth. And in slowly doing that, I was able to come to the place where I am right now.
Okay, so let me just see if I can if I can reflect back what I heard. So there was a point in time where you felt that, okay, overwhelmed as a parent, this is a lot more difficult, it's a lot more challenging than you expected. But that didn't just happen because Divya was on the autism spectrum. You started experiencing that from your eldest child too.
Yeah.
And throughout that process, it sounds like you also had some other limiting beliefs about yourself and your capacity. Yes. So it wasn't just motherhood. So it didn't just show up in motherhood, but that seemed to like shine the brightest light. And so then part of your own development, you realized was, and this is interesting, maybe it didn't happen this way, so you correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like through your painting, like actually tackling something that was really tangible, that was somehow short-term, finishing a painting, almost kind of led into how you could expand and let go and be more open in your mothering. Is that accurate?
You could look at it that way. It's more intertwined. Like, it didn't happen. Like, my relationship with Divya didn't first take off and this happened. It happened together. Like, until then, like, until I took on this game, I didn't even leave her at home for a couple of hours with her dad and go out. I was there all the time with her. And slowly I started, going away for a 3-day course. Like, I would come back at night, but I was not there all day. And she would handle that. And it started with just the 3 hours. I was away from home 3 hours, and she would cry for those, for at least an hour when I wasn't there. So slowly, and I had it that because she cannot live without me, I cannot even go. It's like I was trapped because she cannot handle it. I need to be there. And so it started off like that. So both of those things happened together. Like, I then said, okay, maybe I can, the first opportunity came to go to New York. And I said, I don't think I can do that. How would she be without me for 3 days? She cannot handle it. And then my husband was very supportive. He said, you go. This is what you're meant to do. And I really want you to go. We'll see. We'll handle it. She'll be fine. And the first time I remember I left, she cried for an hour or two. They dropped me off at the airport and she was upset. But then she was fine the rest of the day. And every day I would check, is she okay? How's she doing? And she was fine till I came home, or till I did a video call from the airport. And that's when she got into the car and she said, okay, let's go get mommy. I see her. Let's go get her. And so that's when I got that, okay, she can handle being without me. And so, it happened together. Like,
together. Okay. Yeah. So let's go back to, you were talking about with your painting and your traveling. So how did that, what did it take for you to just start taking on that you could do a lot more, or take a lot more risks?
I think I had to first give up. I cannot do it. I had to give up a lot of notions about myself, that I had these notions that I'm not good at painting portraits. And I was really clear, I cannot paint portraits. And I was so scared I would never even look at my daughter's photographs to paint, because if I'd ruined the proportions, they would look ugly, and I didn't even want that. And so I had notions like that. I had notions that, oh, my kids cannot live without me if I went away for a weekend. And so I had to really look at, and give up one by one. And it really started with getting clear that I can do it. And so when I took on the 100-day game, when you take on something to do for 100 days, you don't have, and you cut out all this, oh, no portraits, no landscapes, no this, no that. You really have a small amount of topics to do. And then I had to get that, oh, fine, let me just try some portraits. And I did. And they did turn out good. And so every step I took, I got clear, oh, I could do this. Not bad. And then I said I wanted to paint abstract. And the first few abstracts I painted, then I got feedback that they weren't great and they were missing composition. And I said, okay, let me see what else I need to do. And so I started looking for resources that would help me. And I said, okay, now I think I want to sell my work. What do I need to do, or what's missing? And so every time I looked at, okay, what's next? And every time it was like a little upgrade of what I thought was possible. And so, yeah, that's
That's lovely. I think that's fantastic. And I have seen your progress. You were chronicling all of your artwork and posting it on Facebook. So again, you broke through your social media
yes.
resistance even then. One thing that, as you're talking about your journey in motherhood, reminds me a lot of my own mother. So when we were growing up, or when we were very young, my mother worked, as far as I could remember. I don't think I'm sure she had maternity leave that I'm aware of. There's four of us, and she had a career, she had something that she devoted her time to outside of the family. So for us, it was never unusual not to have my mom present physically all the time. And to this day, so much of who she is for us has impacted how we relate to what's possible. Because there was never, at least a story that I heard growing up about when your mother life ends and all of a sudden it becomes about your family. So but I can see in her own life, and we're from Panama originally, so culture there does not necessarily, at least at that time, was not necessarily promoting that motherhood should go that way. There's some expectations about what mothers do, and it wasn't build your career, travel, go on your own. So I'm curious about how your culture has shaped who you are as a mother, and perhaps where you've had to maybe veer off and do something different.
Well, my mom was a working mom too. She's a scientist, and so she was working full time. And so I, even though my friends, their parents, most of them were stay-at-home moms, I saw my mom work most of my life. And but I had given up on doing anything, because when I initially came here, I came to USA in 2008, and I was a dependent on my husband's visa. So I couldn't work. And so I said, oh, that's good. I don't want to. I want to be with my daughter. And so even though I grew up seeing my mother work, and I wanted her to be at home a lot, but she couldn't. And so I think I tried to compensate for that with my daughters by being available for them. And then slowly, oh, another year, I'll just stay at home. So I used it to kind of, not want to go out. I didn't want to go out there and work. I didn't want to work for anyone until I got clear that I want to work for myself. Like, I want to start my own business. But so you asked me culturally, how did it impact me?
Yeah, did you receive any sort of social pressure, or were there any expectations about how you should mother, how you should express, or how you should behave?
I think there were, like, the expectation was that I stay at home and teach my daughter, everything that she needs to learn, like get her on top of her alphabet and on top of her reading and do math with her. I didn't do any of that. I just let her read the books she liked to read. I would play with her a little bit, but I didn't play too much. And the expectation, I'd say, from my in-laws was that, we start a family first. And so that kind of, I did impact me a little bit. But I'm trying to think back. I've never thought about it like that.
Okay.
But I'm sure it did have an impact on my way of thinking, or what I should do and what I shouldn't do. I just never thought of it that way.
That's okay. And one of the reasons I mention it is because last week I had Francis and Kathy Conrad on the program, and they mentioned that sometimes these unconscious expectations bubble up when, in their case, when they first got married. But then they also mentioned when you become parents, there's all these unexpected or unconscious expectations that bubble up to the surface, and most of them have something to do with the society and the family structures that we've seen, or the people in our lives who make comments or
Yeah.
share their beliefs or opinions. So I thought that
I
might.
think I think I did, I did have that about my second daughter. Like she should be in school by now. She should be talking by now. If she doesn't go to school, like she doesn't go to school right now. We pulled her out of school and she goes to all day therapy. And so there I did have expectations, like unconscious expectations about how she should be. Like by this age, she should be talking so much. By this age, she should know how to ride a bicycle, or and when I saw she's not going to fit that roadmap, she wasn't going to fulfill on any of those expectations. It kind of was devastating, but it really, my husband was the greatest support at that time. He said back in the olden days in India, kids went to school, but there was no expectation that they should finish in 10 years. There were kids who finished in 2 years or 3 years, and then there were children who took 11 years, who took 15 years. And it was okay. It was nothing, it didn't mean anything about their parents. It didn't mean anything about the child. They weren't labeled. It's just that's how long they took to learn something. And it was normal. And once I was able to let that sit in with me, that okay, she can take as long as she needs to learn. She looks 6, but she behaves 3, and that's fine. That's when I started, freeing up. Like, okay, we started celebrating her every victory, getting present to, her personality. And we started learning from her. And
Mm.
she's been the key driving force for us in growing. Like,
You, you said something to me about what you learned from your daughter. So I want to ask that, and then I want to go back to your older daughter and talk a little bit
sure.
more about that dynamic. So you mentioned something about how you learned to communicate, or how Divya taught you about communication. Can you speak to that?
Sure. One of the things we recently discovered is, we expect children to say, I'm hungry, give me something, and that's the kind of, that's how we're used to using language. But she comes up to me, says, I want a popsicle. And we say, oh, this is not the time for it. No popsicle. She comes back saying, okay, give me ketchup. I said, no, I'm not giving you ketchup. And she goes back and she comes back. And so I've realized a couple of times she comes and then she'll say, I want chicken. And I'd say, you're getting dinner in, 30 minutes. But she would say, I want chicken. And we'd realize that that's her way of communicating. She's really, really hungry. She's not going to say, I'm so hungry that I need something to eat right now. That's not the communication we're going to hear from her. We're going to hear what she says the way she says, which is, I want a popsicle, I want a chocolate, and I want a cookie. I want, and that's when we began to understand that we've been trying to fit her communication into our world and our listening, but rather we'd have to actually listen for where she's coming from. And that way we really started getting her communication. Like another example is she says, open the door. And she says, open the door for everything. Like open the door for open her buckle, open the door for open her pants, open the door for open the door. And so we really had to get that, what she means is open, just that.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to substitute words. We had to come up with our own meanings. And so we had to listen beyond the words she was using. And so everything we had to discover that way with
Wow.
her.
I think that's really fascinating because for what it shows to me anyways is that you're really present, right? You're really, you have to be present. You have to be really mindful, and you also have to connect very intimately so that you get that. Because if I imagine there's a lot of things that you're doing at the same time when she wants to eat something. So it's not like you're just waiting for her every moment, every word, but there's something that you're doing in this at the same time. So being able to then pause that to focus directly and like, what exactly is she trying to communicate? I think that's a skill for all of us to develop. It sounds like you just are getting trained. You get the intensive training.
Yes, on the court, intensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. So I want to ask one more question about your eldest daughter, and then I'm going to invite those who are listening in to share their comments, questions. So go ahead and start preparing what you want to ask about this conversation or what you'd like to contribute. If you rather mute yourself, I'll invite you to do that. If you prefer to put it in the chat, if you're not able to speak out loud, please go ahead and do that now. So going back to you, Lavanya, I'd love to hear more about how you are preparing Annika, your eldest daughter, in what's the dynamic like? Because obviously, I know Divya needs a lot of time and attention, different type of time and attention, and Annika does. So how do you balance providing what they each need, and what impact has Divya's challenges had on Annika?
So I'll first answer the second question, the impact that Divya's had on Annika. Annika's, well, to begin with, she was really social. Like she would go to the park and start up a conversation with complete strangers. She'd tell them everything about us. And so she's really social, she's compassionate. And having a sister like Divya has made her more empathetic. Like she really can connect with anyone. She can understand them. She can, feel their, pain too. And also the impact of, supporting us raised Divya. She's become like a mini therapist. Like she models our therapists that work with Divya. And so she knows how to deal with kids on the spectrum, or she knows what their special needs are. And so she can go to any of our gatherings, and if she meets another kid on the spectrum, she really is able to include their challenges without judging them. So that's
What does she
been,
do?
so she'll just strike up a conversation, she'll play with them, she wouldn't take it personally if they up and left in the middle of the conversation or didn't look at her. So she's able to really interact with a wide variety of people. And I know that's a contribution that Divya's made for her for life. Like I thought for a while she wanted to be a therapist, like a behavior therapist, because of the way she loved, just modeling that therapist at home. And so to begin with, I really didn't balance Annika and Divya. I mean, I took care of Annika's needs, but not her emotional needs. We were focused on Divya, and many times we'd have arguments and upsets. And I really lost track of that until recently I got present to. I've been trying to, here Divya is not fitting in a box, and I'm allowing her to grow the way she needs to grow and not her into a box. But I've been trying to fit Annika into a box, and I was unconscious about that. And so once I got present to that, I really started letting go. I picked my battles. I started opening up. She needed more emotional attention more than the time. And so once I started providing that, we're so much more connected now. And it also is like one of those things that every 2 years, her needs change. Like I just get used to, okay, this is how I handle this. I just learned something about her, and then that's it. She's moved through that phase and I have to relearn something new. So I wouldn't say it was perfect from the beginning. Mm-hmm. We've had our challenges. She'd say she watched the movie Wonder, and she'd say, I feel like that sister right there.
I've not seen the movie. What exactly does that mean?
It's about a boy who's got a deformed face. And so he was homeschooled until 11. And when he went to public school or school at 11, he had a lot of challenges. And so the older sister didn't get that much time from her mom as the younger brother did. And so many times she had challenges she was dealing with, and there was no one there to kind of get her side of things. And so she felt she was alone. And so there's, in that book, there's a narrative, like each character has their own narrative for that part of the book. So she did feel like she was lonely and she didn't get the attention she wanted. And but we've been working through that. I'd say it's not perfect, but we're getting there.
I noticed that you use the word perfect a lot.
Yes.
So that's still something that's running back there in the back, that things have to
Yeah,
be a
I
certain
think,
way. I get
yeah, it is.
it. Well, I'm just going to pause here and see those who are listening in, if you'd like to make a comment or have a question about what any of the things that Lavanya has shared, please do share. Dave.
Hey, Valerie, I had a question. One of the things that my wife, I find, deals with is guilt around doing enough for the kids. And we have 3 beautiful, healthy kids. So I just wonder if that ever came up, and how Lavia dealt with, balancing the needs of one child for the other, and then trying to find your own time, how she wrestled with that guilt, or if she had that.
Yes, thank you, Dave. So I'll just repeat my name. It's Lavanya. And I've had that. And initially, it was an unequal balance. And somewhere I saw a picture that really spoke to me. It was a picture of three kids, like one young youth, one was a middle schooler, and one was a preschooler. And they're all looking beyond a fence at a basketball match. And so only the older kid could see beyond the fence, and the other two couldn't. And they gave them these boxes, and they gave each one a box equally. And so still the younger one could not see beyond the fence. And so the second image, that's okay, Dave, not a problem. The second image had the youngest child have 2 boxes to stand on and look at the match. And the adolescent didn't need a box, or the youth didn't need the box. And so it was equality versus equity. And that picture really spoke to me. And I spoke to Annika and I said, listen, I may not give you, everything equally. I'll give you what you need, but it won't be equal. And one of the things I've found from my childhood and from many other parents and other kids is that no matter what we do, our kids are going to come back and say, you didn't do something for me. And so I just came to terms with that's kind of the circle of life. It's just, however hard we try, they will find something that we didn't do. And I'd rather have it be something that I'm okay with, or, what I'm committed to. So I gave up that guilt. And I really stand in some of my beliefs when I do things for them. And yeah, guilt is something, it's constantly there, but I also every day give it up, that it's okay to not have it be perfect again. But I don't know if I hope that answers your question.
Dave, does that compute?
Oh yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think that helps me help Kimbrough when we're kind of walking through that it's just something that's there, and managing it and understanding that it is there and being okay with it, because you just can't be perfect all the time. And I think that's the story in sometimes our head is that we have to be perfect, we have to be that we don't ever want them to not be happy with us, but that's just not how real life works. So yeah, I think that's great.
How many kids do you have, Dave?
I have 3.
3 children, age?
And they're all very different, and they all need different things. And there is this constant struggle of, we have to give everybody something equal. So the picture that you talked about, I've actually seen that, but I think now that it's going to resonate a little more the next time I see it.
And Dave, I have a question for you. So
Okay.
I'm curious. So as a husband, how do you find, what is your take on how to support your wife and her own feelings on how to mother? Like, what do you do or what do you say currently?
Well, I constantly reinforce that she is enough, and that it's how she's prepared, how she who she compares herself with, right? So she has this ideal image in her head, and for whatever reason she's not meeting it. And so what I try to do is give her a more realistic comparison, and share stories of other people and other moms who maybe aren't meeting the basic stuff that we're doing. And so just getting her to a point where she's accepts who she is and what she's able to do, and that it's enough. um, and that's a challenge sometimes, because she puts a lot of pressure on herself to be perfect. So constantly reinforcing that what she's doing is what she can do, and is what she's meant to do. And sometimes that's hard, because as her husband, she doesn't always believe it. She thinks I'm just telling her that because I have to. But I just keep saying it, and eventually hopefully it will set in and resonate with her.
Thank you for sharing that. And Dave, you're actually calling in from Dallas. So I just want to, or not Dallas, Frisco, maybe? I think Frisco, Texas.
Yeah, I'm up in Frisco.
Frisco, Texas. I just want to give people a sense of where you're talking from.
And
Sure.
can I add something?
Yes.
I wanted to say something to what Dave shared. Uh, you know, it's been the greatest contribution to my older daughter, that I started stepping out of my comfort zone and expressing myself outside of just being a mother. And I've been painting, and I was in an art show, and I was traveling. That gave her like a future, a mom to look up to, a powerful mom that she's really proud of my accomplishments. She's proud of that I went to a conference, I presented posters at 2 conferences. And I've been traveling, and she really is proud of that. She likes to support me in that. She came out to my last art show in Plano, and she put up my floor easels. Like, I gave up on it, but she sat there and fixed it up and helped me arrange everything. And so I realized that that's a contribution I didn't think she needed. She needed to see me grow as a woman, as an individual, to give her that kind of future to live into.
I love that. And I think that's what the children in our lives need, right? I don't have children of my own, but I mentor quite a few of them. And also I have 9 nieces and nephews. There's a lot. 5 of them live here in the same town now, so I spend a lot of time with them. But I think it is part of our responsibility to model what's possible. And I think that's one of the best things that my parents did for us. They were never too old, never had their excuses were not too old, not enough money, not enough time. They really expanded continuously. To this day, they're in their 70s now, and I still see that example. So I love that. I want to say one thing, Dave, to your point about the ideal woman. Oh, I think most women, we have that. We have that image in our mind of what the ideal woman should be doing or is doing, and how we might not be meeting up. She looks a certain way. She behaves a certain way. She has this type of experience or that. And when you start looking at some of the work I've been studying on Alison Armstrong and how to understand men, and conversely, how to understand women, she talks a lot about how we have this mental model of the perfect woman. And the perfect woman is a perfect wife, perfect mother, perfect career person, like perfect everything. And unfortunately, there is no such thing. But it's so deeply ingrained that we're not conscious of it. So I think some of the books that I read, anything by Alison Armstrong, I think would be helpful. But I think she does speak to that often, and it might be something for maybe your wife to even take a look at. Good. Thank you so much, Dave, for sharing that. Anyone else? Any questions or comments? I'm curious to hear what you're getting from this conversation with Lavanya. And feel free to use the chat if you prefer not to speak out loud. All right, I'm just going to pause there for a moment. Let them come up with an opportunity to speak. I think, hi, Johanna.
Hey, Valerie.
Hey.
Well, I'm going to jump in before you call on me because I know you are.
I was not going to today. Go for it. Thank you.
And so I appreciate everything that was shared. I'm calling actually from Dallas. And so I feel like, and I've only have one son. I don't even know what I would do if I had more. I feel like I would go bananas. But it's oddly enough, I feel like my kiddo is pretty proud of the things that I do. And I really try to, do what I can. And even if I'm working at baseball practice or whatever, I've got my laptop on my lap and stuff. I try to just be as present as I can, while I can, and then give him that quality time and put everything away when it's just him and I time. But it's those other variables that are extenuating that maybe I shouldn't pay as much attention to, but I just can't help it. I get the guilt trip mostly from his father, and we are divorced. And so maybe I shouldn't pay as much attention, but he will throw in the, well, I try to pay, I want to be with my son as much, they're just kind of jabs. I don't know why or where they come from. I really don't get it, but it weighs on me so bad. And I feel like this is just like invisible competition or something. I don't know. But it's a guilt that it really comes from there. And I know, like in my head, I'm like, don't even pay attention. It's just, I don't know. It's the weirdest thing though. So it's not even him. It's my own personal guilt, obviously, because, there are times that I feel like I should be doing this or that, manifesting even worse because I know kind of what he's thinking. It's horrible. So
Johanna, what you're saying is that you feel you have your own level of guilt about how much or how little you're interacting with your son. And on top, add insult to injury, your ex-husband also makes comments that has you feel like is a reflection on how little you are doing or how much you could be doing.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And so, so it doesn't even come from him necessarily, from my son. I think he appreciates and I do what I can to explain to him and, all the time and give back and all of these different things. So I think my son understands, and I tell him all the time, I'm learning as I go here. So trust me, I'm making mistakes all the time. I'll pay for some therapy sessions when you're older. I don't know.
How old's your son, Johanna?
12.
12, okay.
He's 12. Yeah. But I mean, those are the kinds of things that and certainly I pray about it. I pray for him, because I'm like, you need Jesus. But, those are the kinds of things like it's like, why do people, I don't know. It's the weirdest thing. So I know I shouldn't pay attention. I understand the logic behind it, but I guess when I feel so guilty already, having anybody just pour salt in there is even like, it's harder. It's just, that's the worst thing. So I don't know that there's anybody that can help with that at all outside of a armored shield or something, but, yeah,
well,
it's just very difficult. It's difficult to ignore when you know that there was a time you cared about that person, and why people would do that is just, it's ugly.
Yeah, I get your pain. And I also hear that you're so committed to giving your son a fantastic life. And when you don't feel like everybody's in your corner, it makes it hard, right? It makes it even more difficult.
Yeah.
So I totally understand.
Yeah.
One thing I would share, and it goes back to Lavanya, what you shared about that image with, that you mentioned that the difference between equality and equity. And one thing that I've learned about children, and again, I want to be very conscious. I don't have my own kids, so my experiences are sometimes kind of far in between. Right? I don't have the regularity. But what I found is when we can tap into what makes them come alive. And Lavanya, you mentioned this with your daughter and how when you asked for her support and her help and your art show, that tapped into something in her. Those are like the super nutritious moments. I think if we really just focus on giving, I'm just going to use food as an example. If we just give food, you know, empty calories, let's say, because it's food, it's something you can eat, like those, I don't want to malign any junk food or any snacks, but you know, there's some snacks that you eat and it's like, did I just eat the whole bag? I don't even feel full, right? But the action of eating took place. There's something empty, a bowl or something in front of you, but you don't feel fulfilled. And there's sometimes that you could have a little something, but is packed with so much nutrition in your soul, you feel satisfied and fulfilled. I have this experience that with children is the same, that when you can tap into exactly what that child feels the most, gets the most value from, and bring that in, that the level of fulfillment for them and for you is great. I'll give an example. I remember I have a couple of nieces. They live here in town now. They just moved to Dallas about a week ago. And so I've been spending time with them and just kind of helping them get acclimated. The eldest one is 13. And I know she enjoys talking. She's kind of intellectual, loves to read. And so I've made time to like, hey, let's go to this bookstore. Hey, let's go to this public speaking workshop. I'm, you know, some of the kids I'm mentoring. So I've involved her in some of that. I know the next youngest one loves makeup and clothes, and she's already hinted at wanting to get a makeover at Sephora for her birthday. So we talk about makeup and clothes. Like I really try to talk to them about what they're most interested in or get information about what they're most interested in. And I share that because I feel like when we can address their deepest needs and desires or their greatest interest is when they feel the most fulfilled. And we also can tap into what they most need from us. So Lavanya, I'd love for you to speak to that if you could.
In fact, I was going to say something. Nurturing that, even though we don't agree with it, is what I've found that made the most difference. Like there are so many opinions I have about what my daughter should feel, you know, should spend her time on, or should do, or she should speak this way. And I like giving that up and letting her be. And even if I don't agree, just letting her be has been the greatest learnings recently for me. And I can share the example I shared with you previously. So she comes, one day I went to pick her up at school and she comes back saying, today all fifth graders got a cake pop. And there was a fourth grader who was looking at my cake pop and they didn't get any. So I gave mine to her. And immediately me and my mom, who were in the car with her, said, why did you do that? You should have kept it for yourself. You don't have to sacrifice. And I was retelling this incident to my husband and to Valerie on a conversation. And I really got present that we didn't acknowledge her. We didn't thank her for being so generous for, you know, giving it away. It takes something for an 11-year-old to be that way. And instead of that, I tried to correct her. And that's when I got that I've been trying to, you know, impose my views on her and impose how she should be and not how she, you know, acknowledge and let her expand how she is. And so since then, I've taken on a lighter approach. There are some non-negotiables. Like I'm not going to mess around with those. But the rest of the things, I just let her be. I let her do what she loves. I don't try to correct her or so. Yeah, I really do think I like the example of food, Valerie. And yeah, nurturing what their soul needs is what matters.
We have to be plugged in and present to do that. Kind of like what you said about your daughter and Divya's expressing that, you know, for a kid to want ketchup, it's probably not really ketchup. There's something behind that. So being plugged in is what really helps. I so have enjoyed this conversation, Lavanya. Thank you so much for sharing yourself so openly and beautifully with us. And for having yet another breakthrough moment.
Yes. And I do want to say it wasn't so hard opening up. It was, in fact, really enlivening. And I'm going to take that on for my personal business and my personal goals coming up.
Fabulous. Yeah. I know we've talked about some ideas of what you could do. Oh, tell us, now that you've started to sell your paintings, can you tell us where we could find your paintings or how we should, get a hold of you so that if people
Sure.
are interested?
You can find me on Facebook or Instagram. My page is Lavanya Challa Art, and that's my web page too. It's lavanyachallaart.com. And you can find what I'm working on Instagram. I keep posting. And both my kids are my biggest inspiration for the work I do. To be yourself no matter what, and express the joy.
As that is lovely. I'll make sure to put that on the notes for the podcast so
Sure.
people could find you and connect. Thank you so
Thank
much, Lavanya,
you.
for being so generous with your time and your energy with us today. Looking forward to continuing the theme of family and the impact that family has on us. Next week, we're actually going to be talking to Catherine Gonzalez. Catherine has been a great supporter of this program for quite a few months, and I believe she's on the line right now. Catherine, I don't know if you're available or able to speak.
Good morning. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we hear you perfectly. Thank you. So I was looking forward to our conversation next week. I know you and I have chatted a little bit about how family has played a role in your life. And so you're going to uncover and discover some really wonderful things about what Catherine's been doing and how unique and impactful her upbringing has been, how she is as an adult. Catherine, anything else that you'd like for us to know about your conversation next week?
No, I'm looking forward to it.
Yay!
Also, looking to conquer some fears as well.
Conquering some fears, great. And I want to, I love that you said that, because I do want to encourage, those of you who are interested in being a part of this program, whether as a guest or listening in, if this is going to be an opportunity for you to break through your ability to be more expressive, more conscious, connected, and creative, please come and let me know. This is what I do. Why I love to coach on leadership, especially because I think leadership in life, is being able to express your values, express yourselves in ways in which bring you to life and also alters and transforms your environment. And that's what we're here to do. So I'm so grateful to each of you for taking time to share that with us today. And like I said, we'll be posting this shortly on social media. Share with your friends and start having conversations that bring you and them to life as well. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Every day.
Bye.